President Donald Trump delivered his State of the Union address last night. Our Chase Campbell talked with local political party leaders about their reactions.
Washington County political party leaders offered diverging impressions of President Donald Trump's 2026 State of the Union address, delivered to a joint session of Congress Tuesday night. Kadeen Ritter, vice chair of the Washington County Republican Party, praised the address for its patriotism, saying it highlighted the president and his administration's achievements over the first year of his second term, including cracking down on illegal immigration across the southern border.
I thought it was a powerful message about American patriotism, the greatness of our country. It's a country on the rise, and President Trump did a very good job of reminding us how special it is that we're celebrating 250 years of this great country.
Willa O'Neill, chair of the Washington County Democratic Party, says she was unimpressed by the speech, which she says didn't present a cohesive vision for the nation and failed to touch on quality of life issues affecting everyday Americans.
In the past, regardless of party, our presidents, our leaders, have tried to unify this country. Unfortunately, I didn't hear any of that last night.
Both Ritter and O'Neill discussed the president's handling of tariffs, though they differed sharply in their assessments. Ritter defended Trump's authority to impose them, saying the Supreme Court's recent ruling doesn't foreclose his options.
The Supreme Court ruling doesn't say that he can't use tariffs, so let's be real clear about that. So to the extent that he's going to modify the current tariffs that are in effect, he can do that, and I think he will.
O'Neill argued that the tariffs represent a broken promise, saying the administration's trade policies are driving up costs for families who were told prices would fall.
He promised that prices would go down at day one, and then he introduced the tariffs, which, regardless of what he wants us to believe, are costing families well over $1,000 a year in added cost.
On the economy, Ritter acknowledged that some improvements may take time to materialize, but said that there are already measurable signs of progress worth recognizing.
There are things that the American public is feeling, and there are things that are going to be lagging indicators. So we're not going to see some of those things come to fruition until maybe a little bit longer. But he's only in his first year. So we do have to give him some latitude, but recognize that there are accomplishments.
O'Neill pushed back on the administration's optimistic economic framing, saying the picture doesn't match what she sees in her community.
They're struggling to pay for groceries, for health care, for utilities. I'm not sure who it is who is enjoying this wonderful economy except for the people at the very top, and that's not most of us.
In Marietta, Chase Campbell, WTAP News.